Hello, good afternoon. This is Time with PIAC, where we delve into issues pertaining to the upstream petroleum industry as well as petroleum revenue management. Today, we focus on the latest issue paper of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, which talks about the role of the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, GNPC, in the upstream petroleum industry, the challenges and prospects. We all know the role of the National Oil Company in the industry cannot be overlooked. This session will provide a comprehensive analysis of the corporation's pivotal role, its current challenges, and the promising opportunities ahead. Remember, you can send in your questions and comments as the discussion progresses, and we will respond to them in the comment section. I'm your host, Jessica A. Champon. I'm joined by the technical manager of PIAC, Mr. Mark Ajiman, who will be sharing some perspectives on this subject matter. We all know that Mark is not new to Time with PIAC. He has been with us a couple of times to give us some insightful sessions, and today promises to be another opportunity. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Jessica.
You're welcome to Time with PIAC.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
It's always good to have you here with us. So today we are talking about the National Oil Company, and we know that this discussion arises because PIAC published its second issue paper. Can you just tell us about the publication of this issue papers and why the focus on the National Oil Company this time?
Yeah, thank you, and my greetings to your viewers and listeners. So PIAC issue papers are usually based on issues and topical discussions that surround the release of its statutory reports. So either a half-year report or an annual report, some issues that we think are quite topical and should be given a certain focus. So we usually have an issue paper around that topical issue or such topical issues. So this was actually based on the 2023 semi-annual report that we felt that we should zoom in on GNPC, looking at the changing world of the upstream petroleum industry and looking at the operations of our National Oil Company. We should give a focus to certain challenges that faces the corporation and then the prospect that's abounds for the corporation. So that is why we actually focus on GNPC this time around in the second issue paper.
Let's get into the details of our conversation now. We all hear about GNPC, National Oil Company. Can you just give us a brief to the establishment of the GNPC and what exactly was it supposed to do in the industry?
Yeah, thank you, Iska. Over the years, since the 1950s, the 1960s, the various constitutions that were in place then actually vested the natural resource, which is hydrocarbon or petroleum, for the president to have oversight over it, but in trust for the people. So in order for the country to kind of get involved in the upstream petroleum operations, there was the need to create a special purpose vehicle, more like a commercial vehicle, to lead the process on behalf of the state. And that's when GNPC was established under PNDC Law 64. And it was at that time until 2011 when the Petroleum Commission was created. GNPC was playing both a regulatory and a commercial function on behalf of the state. So its mandate was to go out there, look for investors, come to invest in upstream petroleum activities, and also help us explore and make finds of hydrocarbon deposit for the country. So that is how come GNPC was established, to be the special purpose vehicle in driving the country's agenda of engaging meaningfully in the upstream petroleum operations. But when Petroleum Commission was established, the regulatory function was actually taken from GNPC and given to the Petroleum Commission. So currently GNPC plays the commercial role on behalf of the state.
So after the establishment of GNPC, was the law clear on what exactly it was supposed to do? That is the mandate of GNPC under PNDC Law 64.
The law was very clear. The law says that GNPC should look and attract investment into the upstream petroleum industry. and also explore and help make finds and grow the upstream petroleum industry, and also be the government eye, more or less, in the upstream petroleum industries, and also do whatever that is necessary to make sure that it can operate gainfully in the upstream petroleum. So the law was clear, and then the regulatory part I mentioned earlier on, which was ceded to Petroleum Commission in 2011 when it was established. But the law, the mandate of GNPC was very clear in PNDC Law 64. It was very clear.
So if you're just joining us, this is Time with PIAC, and today we are looking at the role of the National Oil Company, that is the GNPC, in the upstream petroleum industry, as well as their challenges and prospects. And this discussion actually arises because PIAC published its second issue paper. And today my guest is Mr. Mark Agyemang, and he has just given us a brief to the establishment of GNPC and what exactly they are supposed to do in the upstream petroleum industry. Going forward, Mark, when we look at the GNPC, it is evident that they need a lot of resources to be able to be the player in the upstream industry that we expect. So how is the committee, or how is the work of the corporation financed?
Thank you. You see, NOCs all over the world represent the state interest. And with time, they've all evolved. And you will expect GNPC to evolve with time. Now, GNPC financing, since the enactment of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, the corporation takes its financing directly from the Petroleum Holding Fund. So this is a fund set up at the Bank of Ghana where all petroleum revenues are deposited. And in fact, when the law was reviewed in 2015, it actually gave priority for the disbursement of GNPC share to them first before any other disbursements are made from the Petroleum Holding Fund. In fact, to be very concise with this, the law clearly states that when the Petroleum Holding Fund receives oil revenue, within 3 days, GNPC share should be given to it. So GNPC can contribute to what we call its equity share cash calls and also its operational function. So GNPC receives money directly from the Petroleum Holding Fund. That is funded by government. But there's a time limit on it, which I know probably we will delve into that later.
Yeah, definitely we will delve into that later. But since 1983, GNPC was established. How has the corporation evolved? Because we know that the upstream industry is not static, it's dynamic. There are changing trends, technology, and all of that. How has GNPC evolved over the years?
The evolving of the corporation has taken quite a delayed time. Until recently, GNPC was just GNPC, okay, solely relying on government, just one corporate entity. But then GNPC took a strategic move by trying to evolve and play its role in the upstream business through what they call subsidiarization. So that is where you realize that GNPC has established about 3 subsidiaries. So we have Exploco, that is the exploration arm of GNPC. So they lead the exploration mandate of the corporation. Then we have what we call GOSCO. So it's more like the commercial arm of the corporation. And until recently, you know, there was JOHL, which was also more like an operating arm of GNPC, to use the word operating quite loosely. But then the shares of JOHL has now been transferred to Exploco. So it took a long time for the corporation to evolve. And one of the reasons could be attributed to the lack of review and updating of the law establishing GNPC, that is the PNDC Law 64. It could be attributable to that since the industry keeps changing day in, day out, one will have expected that the law establishing our national oil company will be reviewed and updated to be kind of abreast with current times. But then over 40 years now, that law has not been touched. And it is one of the issues as a committee we raised in this issue paper.
Mark, let's get into the issue paper now, and then we look at the challenges that GMPC faces.
Yeah.
So we have the first one being the revision of PNDC Law 64. Can you educate our viewers on how that is a challenge for GMPC currently?
Yeah. That's what I was just trying to touch on, just to take the wind out of your sails. Yeah. See, this is a 40-year law. Okay, more than 40 years actually. It's about 41 years now. That has never been reviewed. Certain function of GNPC was given to the Petroleum Commission in 2011. One would have expected that the GNPC law would have been updated, to take out those functions from the GNPC law, but that wasn't done. The industry has changed over the past 40 years, and strategically, countries all over the world are positioning their NOCs to play certain roles. Some NOCs are power generators, electricity generators. Others are into commercial sales of crude oil and gas, and even importation of crude oil and gas. Others are solely focused on expanding beyond their territorial boundaries into international market. But you see, if you give that focus to the corporation and for them to do some of this, you need to update what established them, bring in current development and evolving issues in the industry, and refocus the NOC, because when it was established some 41 years ago, the focus of even the industry has changed. Okay, we have energy transition coming on, and you have NOCs playing part in the entire petroleum value chain, that is from the upstream industry, the downstream industry, the midstream industry, and the downstream industry. That is about refocusing the NOC by giving them a certain kind of mandate from the established mandate that was given to it when it was established. So that is the way GNPC has evolved. It has taken quite a long time, but then they have done something through subsidiarization. Let's see where the country will refocus GNPC to go towards.
Another challenge in the issue paper has to do with funding of GNPC from the PHF. But in your earlier submission, you stated that the law is very clear on the transfers from the PHF to the GNPC. So how is that a challenge as of now?
Yeah, it's a challenge. As I hinted earlier on, there is a time-bound limit on the state funding GNPC. But the PRMA is clear. It states that 15 years after the effective implementation of the petroleum, the PRMA, the GNPC should be ceded from receiving funding from the Petroleum Holding Fund. So the PRMA came into effect in 2011. So calculate 15 years from 2011. So that is 2026. Okay. That is 2026, meaning that by 2026 or in 2026, GNPC should be able to stand on its own feet, both technically and financially, to pursue its course, to pursue its mandate. But then the question now is that, is GNPC able to do that in 2026? There are several constraints that will prevent GNPC from achieving such status, such financial muscle and technical muscle to stand alone. There are various issues that we can attribute to that. Some of them can be attributable to GNPC's own pursuits. Some can be attributable to the state in laboring GNPC in some aspects.
Another challenge here is delay in releases to GNPC, which is closely linked to the funding of GNPC from the PHF. So we see these challenges, and it would definitely affect the operations of the NOC. Yes. So as PIAC, have you made any recommendations on this?
Yes. So those delays are actually clear violation of the PRMA. The law states that within 3 days of the PHF receiving petroleum receipts, GNPC share should be given to them. And as I mentioned earlier on, GNPC has been prioritized over any other accounts that receive petroleum revenue. There are instances where PIAC, through its analysis, found out that sometimes over 50 days, GNPC do not receive its share of its budgetary allocation. And this is clear violation of the law. And this actually kind of impedes the operations of the corporation. And these are clear violations of the law, infractions of the law. So we've pointed some of this out through our findings and recommendation. And the ministries in its response have indicated that they've taken note of it, and they are going to make sure that that provision of the law, where within 3 days the money should be given to GNPC, is abided with.
Still on the challenges, and I think this is one issue that PIAC keeps hammering on: indebtedness of states and other government agencies to GNPC. You've stated again that is a challenge, and I know that is something that PIAC keeps talking about. Can you just educate our viewers on what that whole thing is about? Is GNPC now supposed to give loans? Are they supposed to give guarantees and all of that? Just educate our viewers on that.
That's what I referred earlier on to, government laboring GNPC. Yeah, they are laboring them. You are funding them. So in one breath, you give them money with your right hand, and then the second breath, you use your left hand to take. Government is responsible for state-owned enterprises, their funding and operations. Government is responsible for the development of the country. These state-owned enterprises can come in through corporate social responsibility or investment, as you may want to call it. We have instances which we have documented quite extensively where government will ask GNPC to pre-finance or give guarantees or give loans to other state-owned enterprises. We have the case of VRA, we have the Car Power Ship, we have ECG, we have the Western Corridor Road Enclaves, we have the Tema Oil Refinery, where currently, as we speak, GNPC is owed almost to the tune of $1 billion. And the state is supposed to pay them. But it is the same state that is funding them. So you see the dichotomy here. It is an issue, and that actually causes financial headache to the corporation. So that is the government side. Now, the issue with the law I was talking about earlier on, if we amend the law or update the law and restructure the governance structure of GNPC, I'm sure in modernizing the governance structure, GNPC can be able to say no to government when some of these requests are made. When some of these requests are made, if the governance structure of GNPC is diversified enough, where all appointees are not from government, you have independent bodies also making appointments to the governance board of GNPC, they can be in a position to say no to some of this government demand. You are ceding the corporation of government subvention in 2026, but you are owing the corporation so much of this. How will they be able to stand alone and operate? That is a question we should be asking.
Okay, Mark, before we move on to the prospects, still on the challenges, there's just one that caught my eye right now, and it's an issue that is already in the public domain. PIAC's position on payments of revenues into the PHF, especially when it comes to do with JOHL. Yes. Again, just educate us on that, and how is that a challenge for GNPC?
Well, the challenge, just a 10 seconds history of how JOHL even came to be. Anadaco, an international oil company, was leaving the shores of Ghana, and they were selling their shares in 10 and Jubilee, 7% each. So the law says that government should have the first right of refusal. So they presented this idea to the state, and the state didn't say no to the idea, but in the midst of trying to more like source for funds to acquire this 7%, or even say no to Anadaco for Anadaco to take the shares somewhere else, GNPC approached the Ministry of Finance for a loan to acquire those shares. So in this back and forth scenario, Anadaku decided to set up an offshore company in the Cayman Islands, and that is what is called JOHL, Jubilee Oil Holding Limited, to hold that 7% interest whilst the negotiations and transactional activities are ongoing. So GNPC took the loan from Ministry of Finance and acquired that 7% share. And in acquiring that 7% share, JOHL, that was temporary fund, became a subsidiary of GNPC. And it's important to note that when JOHL made its first lifting in the field that we have, the 10 Jubilee field, JOHL was not incorporated in Ghana. It made its lifting somewhere June, July, but it was incorporated somewhere August, September. And that was unlawful because the EMP Act, the Exploration and Production Act, clearly states that to engage in petroleum activities in Ghana, you need to be registered as a Ghanaian company. So it was after the lifting that even JOHL was incorporated under the laws of Ghana. Now, the positions are very clear. GNPC is saying that they incorporated JOHL in Ghana under the Companies Act and therefore does not come under the jurisdiction of the PRMA. And PIAC is saying that, look, the PRMA is clear that the direct and indirect participation of the states, whatever revenue that is derived out of any of this, should come into the Petroleum Holding Fund. It constitutes government revenue. You understand? So that's the PIAC's position, and GNPC also has a position. In fact, we reiterated that position in our 2023 annual report, which Parliament is yet to meet on. And it is the hope of the committee that when Parliament meets on PIAC's 2023 annual report, this issue will be addressed and bring that issue to finality. I mentioned earlier on that the interest held by JOHL has now been transferred to GNPC Esploco, and they are treating the revenue of Esploco the same way they were treating the revenue of JOHL. Our position still remains the same. Jessica, there are laws, okay, that covers broad section of probably a sector, but then part of the sector can be taken out and a law provided for that subsection. When it comes to petroleum revenues, the Petroleum Revenue Management Act is the law that governs how petroleum revenue should be treated. Not the Companies Act, not the earmark and funds realignment capping act. It is the PRMA. Remember when GIF, the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, was taken out of receiving federal revenue? PIAC made it clear to the ministry that, look, it falls under the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. That has more like, that is supreme to how petroleum revenue should be managed. And that act should be given a focus. And then GIF was brought back. So that is our argument that we are making clearly with regards to JOHL. So that's the history, and that's the position of both institutions.
But beyond all these challenges, what are the prospects for the National Oil Company? Because we are not going to stop producing oil anytime soon. Yes. We're actually looking at getting more discoveries on board. Yes. And GNPC will still be playing a role out there. So what are the prospects for the company, and what can we do better?
What we can do better is first, let's restructure the governance arrangements of GNPC. That is where we should start from. That is very, very important. How GNPC governance system is currently allows for political interference, and therefore the law should be updated, reviewed and updated to modernize the governance structure of the corporation. The second prospect is the states should stick to its role as agent of development and not interfere or rely on state-owned enterprises like GNPC to do quasi-fiscal expenditure on behalf of the state. It is not the responsibility of SOEs to do development. They can do it. They can undertake developmental projects here and there or activities here and there, but that will be as a result of their own corporate social responsibility or investment. The state should focus on playing its primary role as agent of development. The third one is that GNPC should should refocus its direction, especially in this movement of transitioning from fossil fuels into renewable or green energy. Yes, through subsidiarization, GMPC can do that. They can have a subsidiary that is solely focused on green energy, have a subsidiary that's primarily focused on fossil fuels. Then GMPC as the holder, so those will be shareholders, shareholding companies. So GMPC as the holder can sit at the top and effectively direct these share holding companies to do their work very effectively, and that will even allow the holder, which is GNPC, to kind of move into other frontiers and bring the subsidiaries along.
Mark, before we let you go, has GNPC lived up to its expectation?
Not the intent we established it for. It has helped us as a country. It has actually helped us, brought in investors, this being our eye in the meeting rooms, in boardrooms. But then the thinking at the time was that by now GNPC would have been more or less a national oil company that is competing globally.
Is energy transition posing a threat?
It is actually. It is. And therefore, that is why even in the issue paper, we recommended that we need to kind of look at our developmental orientation and our developmental perspective and kind of focus on exploiting fully the resource that we have. And even if we don't have to go into the European and the American market, we can look within Africa. There's a huge potential for the upstream industry in Africa. We have refineries even just in the sub-region. And even in Ghana here, we've just had a refinery that's augmenting Tor. So we can look within, exploit the resource, and take advantage of the transition and prevent what in future we might end up having as stranded assets. So we have that opportunity. It is how we refocus GNPC and resource them.
Finally, before we let you go, PIAC keeps producing reports. We've seen the issue papers. When you publish those documents, what next?
Yeah, so PIAC, sometimes I always tell people that PIAC is like a department under Parliament. PIAC reports directly to Parliament. PIAC is not clothed with the power to enforce its recommendation and its findings. So every issue paper, every policy brief, every statutory report that we produce, we submit them to Parliament. Parliament has the power and the authority to actually enforce and sanction infractions. So we usually submit it to Parliament for Parliament to take the needed action. Through our own way, as an institution, through a collaborative way, we usually engage some of these stakeholders to get them to implement some of these recommendations and kind of change from some of these issues. But then we are not clothed with the power to enforce. We only, through soft power, try to collaborate with them to enforce.
Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us on this edition. This is what time would allow us. And thank you all for making time to join us in this edition. Like we indicated earlier, this is the issue paper, the second one by the committee, and it is available for download via our website, www.piacghana.org. You can also reach out to us via any of our channels, and we will respond to you all the questions and the comments that you have. Until we come your way next month with another edition, let's keep the conversation going. I was your host, Jessica Echampon. Have a lovely afternoon.